We live in a world ruled not by governments, systems, or authority, but by the voice inside our own heads. It speaks all day, telling us who we are, what to fear, what to chase, and what to avoid. That voice calls itself you, and you believe it. But what if that voice has been lying to you all along? What if the thoughts you follow so faithfully are not truth, but merely echoes of your conditioning? The greatest prison is not made of walls, it's made of unchecked thoughts. Your thoughts are not reality, they are reflections distorted by emotion, memory, and desire. They tell you what they think you see, not what is. When fear dominates, the mind paints the world as dangerous. When anger takes hold, it convinces you that everyone is against you. When desire arises, it whispers that happiness lies somewhere else. In another person, another place, another moment. But reality is never as cruel or as complicated as your thoughts make it. Most of your suffering doesn't come from life itself. It comes from the stories your mind tells about life. When you stop believing those stories, life becomes simple again. Your thoughts are not reality. They are interpretations shaped by memory, fear, and desire. The human mind is a storyteller. It never stops weaving narratives about what happened, what could happen, and what should happen. But what we often forget is that these stories are not truth. They are only reflections of our inner conditioning. Every thought you have passes through filters. Your past experiences, your emotions, your insecurities, and your hopes. So what you perceive is not the world as it is, but the world as your mind allows you to see it. You think you are seeing truth, but you are only seeing yourself reflected in everything around you. When fear dominates your mind, your thoughts create danger when none exists. When desire takes hold, your thoughts convince you that happiness lies somewhere in the future, in something you do not yet have. When anger rules, your thoughts build enemies out of people who simply do not agree with you. Thoughts are shapeshifters. They take the form of your emotional state and convince you that they are facts. That is why they cannot be trusted. They are reactive, not reflective. They are the echo of your inner turbulence, not the voice of truth. Your thoughts do not describe reality. They distort it. They pull you into judgment, comparison, and conflict. You begin to live in your head instead of the present moment. You argue with yourself, imagine scenarios that never happen, and suffer from things that exist only in your imagination. The more you identify with these thoughts, the more you lose touch with what is actually happening now. Life becomes a movie projected by your mind, and you forget that you are not the screen. You are the one watching it. Thoughts are shaped by memory, and memory is selective. You remember pain more vividly than peace, loss more deeply than love. So your thoughts are biased. They carry the residue of everything you felt before. Desire bends them toward fantasy, fear bends them toward caution, ego bends them toward pride. When you follow these distorted guides, you drift further from truth. You start reacting to ghosts of the past or illusions of the future, instead of responding to the reality in front of you. The truth is not found in thought. It is found in awareness. Awareness is the clear sky, thoughts are passing clouds. But most people stare so long at the clouds that they forget the sky even exists. They chase every thought, believe every emotion, and call that living. To step back and watch your thoughts without following them is to begin awakening. It is to realize that not everything the mind says deserves your obedience. Thoughts lie not because they are evil, but because they are incomplete. They are fragments trying to describe the whole. When you see that, you stop chasing thoughts for truth. You let them pass, and in their passing, silence reveals reality. The mind creates illusions to protect the ego, not to reveal truth. The ego is a fragile construction, An image built from what you believe you are and what you fear you are not. It feeds on approval, success, and identity. To keep itself alive, it uses the mind as its servant, weaving illusions that keep you trapped in false security. When something threatens your sense of self, the mind rushes to defend it with stories. I'm right. They're wrong. I don't care, or it doesn't matter. These are not truths. They are walls built to protect the fragile image you've mistaken for yourself. The mind will twist reality, justify actions, and hide insecurities, all so the ego can survive a little longer. This protective mechanism is subtle. It doesn't feel like illusion because it feels personal, emotional, and justified. But if you observe carefully, you'll see that many of your thoughts are designed to maintain control, to make you feel superior, innocent, or victimized. When you're praised, the mind says, "See, I am worthy." When you're criticized, it says, "They don't understand me." In both cases, it's the same illusion playing two sides of the same game. The ego never seeks truth, it seeks validation. It wants to be right, not free. And so the mind becomes a craftsman of lies, spinning reasons, excuses, and narratives that keep you comfortable in falsehood. Illusion can also appear as self-doubt. The ego doesn't just want to feel superior. It also loves to feel important through suffering. It tells you that you're not good enough, not ready, not capable. Because even in your pain, you're still at the center of the story. You are the one who suffers, the one who struggles, the one who tries. The ego thrives on being someone, even if that someone is miserable. Truth, however, requires emptiness. It requires you to drop the story of me, and that terrifies the ego. So the mind distracts you with endless thoughts, planning, worrying, comparing, analyzing. Because stillness would expose the illusion. When you begin to see this pattern, it can feel unsettling. You realize that much of what you've believed has been shaped by fear. The fear of losing control, of being seen, of being nothing. But this realization is also liberation. The moment you see the illusion, it begins to lose power. The ego's protection mechanism only works when you believe its lies. Once you witness the mind's tricks, the game changes. You no longer need to defend, prove, or hide. You can simply observe. Truth doesn't need defense. It doesn't hide behind excuses or demand to be right. It is silent, steady, and open. When the illusions of the mind dissolve, what remains is clarity. A quiet awareness untouched by pride or fear. That awareness is your true nature, not the noisy protector the mind pretends to be. When you stop letting the ego use your thoughts as armor, you begin to see reality as it is, not as you wish it to be. The mind creates illusions to protect the ego, not to reveal truth. Every human being lives within a mental landscape shaped not by what is real, but by what the ego can tolerate. The ego fears exposure, it fears being wrong, being judged, or being insignificant. So the mind builds walls made of illusions, stories that comfort us, justifications that protect us, and beliefs that make us feel certain even when we are lost. The ego whispers through thoughts, convincing you that you are in control, that your opinions are correct, and that others are to blame when things go wrong. But in truth, these are illusions meant to preserve identity, not uncover reality. The mind's first instinct is not to see clearly, but to survive emotionally. When you face uncomfortable truths, the mind begins to twist them. If someone criticizes you, the ego will transform that criticism into an attack. If you fail, it will tell you that success wasn't that important. If you make a mistake, it will create excuses instead of humility. This is the illusion of protection, the false comfort that keeps the ego intact. The mind would rather live in a carefully constructed lie then face the vulnerability of truth. But each illusion adds another layer of separation from the world, another wall between what is and what is imagined. Over time, those illusions become so thick that you can no longer distinguish between reality and the stories your mind tells to protect your pride. The mind's illusions are not always negative. Sometimes they come disguised as dreams, ambitions, or noble justifications. You may convince yourself that your actions are selfless when they are driven by hidden desires. You may believe you seek peace, but in reality, you crave control. You may think you want truth, but only if it agrees with your existing beliefs. These illusions are more dangerous because they feel righteous. They make you feel pure while keeping you blind. The ego uses them to strengthen its identity, wrapping itself in a cloak of virtue while quietly feeding on validation. To see through these illusions requires courage. It means facing the uncomfortable possibility that much of what you believe about yourself and the world is distorted. It means accepting that your mind can deceive you, not out of malice, but out of fear. The ego is terrified of disappearing, so the mind fills your awareness with noise, opinions, judgments, memories, and fantasies, so you never look deeply enough to notice that the self it protects is just a thought. When you stop chasing illusions, the mind begins to quiet. You start to see reality without filters, without the ego's need to defend or dominate. This is not an easy path, because truth dissolves everything false within you. But when the illusions fade, what remains is clarity, an awareness untouched by fear, pride, or pretense. In that stillness, you finally see that truth was never hidden by the world, only by the stories your mind told to protect who you thought you were. Observe your thoughts. Don't obey them. Most people live under the illusion that their thoughts are commands that must be followed. But in truth, they are only suggestions. The mind speaks constantly, commenting on everything, judging, planning, and imagining. It tells you who you are, what you should fear, and what you must do. But when you begin to observe your thoughts without reacting to them, you realize they have no real power unless you give them attention. Observation creates space, a gap between the thought and your response. In that space lies freedom, the ability to choose instead of being controlled. When you observe, you become the witness rather than the participant. You notice the rising and falling of thoughts as if watching clouds drift across the sky. Some are dark and heavy, some light and harmless, but all of them pass if you do not chase them. This simple act of watching begins to dissolve identification. You start to see that the mind is not you. It is a process, a constant flow of impressions shaped by your past. The more you watch, the clearer this becomes. Thoughts lose their intensity when they are observed, because awareness robs them of the energy they need to survive. They only grow when you feed them with belief and emotion. To observe your thoughts is not to resist them or push them away. Resistance still means you are entangled with them. Observation is passive but powerful. You neither fight nor follow. You simply let thoughts appear and disappear without judgment. It is like standing by a riverbank and watching the current move without trying to stop it or swim in it. When you practice this, you begin to notice that most of your thoughts are repetitive, recycled fragments from yesterday. They replay conversations, worries, and fantasies that have little to do with the present. Seeing this repetition weakens their influence because you recognize their mechanical nature. They are habits of mind, not messages of truth. Through observation, awareness deepens, and you begin to sense something beyond the noise. A stillness that is always present beneath the stream of thoughts. That stillness is your real center. From there, you can act with clarity instead of impulse. You no longer need to obey every fearful or anxious thought that arises because you understand they are temporary visitors, not truth. The more you observe, the less reactive you become. Emotions that once controlled you lose their grip because you no longer identify with the thoughts that create them. Eventually, observation transforms your relationship with the mind. Instead of being dragged by every mental wave, you learn to stand grounded in awareness. You realize that thoughts are tools meant to serve, not masters meant to rule. By observing them, you reclaim your freedom. You stop living according to the noise inside your head and begin living from the stillness behind it. In that stillness, you are no longer a prisoner of thought. You are the watcher, free and untouched by the stories the mind tries to tell. Freedom begins when you stop believing everything your mind says. The mind is a storyteller that never rests, spinning endless narratives about who you are, what others think of you, and how the world should be. It gives constant commentary, labeling every moment as good or bad, success or failure, but none of these thoughts are the truth. They are interpretations filtered through fear, memory, and desire. When you start to believe every thought as absolute, you become trapped in its web. You react to illusions as if they were real. You suffer not because of life itself, but because of the stories the mind tells about life. Freedom is not about controlling thoughts, it is about seeing through them. To stop believing your mind means to see it for what it is. A tool, not a master. The mind's job is to process information, plan and analyze, but it was never meant to dictate your sense of identity or peace. The problem arises when you confuse thinking with knowing. Thinking is limited, always tied to the past or projecting into the future. Knowing is direct awareness, the quiet recognition of what is real in this moment. When you rest in awareness instead of thought, you begin to see that the mind can speak, but you no longer have to follow. It becomes background noise, not the guide of your life. The mind will tell you that you are not enough, that you need more to be complete, that others are ahead of you, or that you have failed. But the moment you observe those thoughts, instead of believing them, they lose their authority. You realize that you have been listening to a voice that repeats the same lies again and again. The voice changes its words, but never its intention, to keep you restless and searching. Freedom comes when you see that you do not have to answer that voice anymore. You can let it talk, and you can simply remain silent within yourself. When you no longer believe every thought, you begin to live with presence. You see things as they are, not as your mind wants them to be. You stop reacting automatically to fear, anger, or doubt. A space opens inside you. A space wide enough to hold all experiences without being consumed by them. In that space, peace arises naturally, not because life has become perfect, but because your relationship with thought has changed. You understand that thoughts are fleeting shadows, and you are the light that reveals them. True freedom is not the absence of thoughts, but the absence of identification with them. When you stop believing every story your mind tells, the grip of fear and desire loosens. You begin to act from clarity rather than compulsion. The world remains the same, but your perception transforms. You no longer live as a slave to mental noise. You live as awareness itself, calm, unshaken, and free.